by the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Bible class, another Bible study. My name is Uzziah Lewy, one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH, CHOKMAH, BINAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, giving all honor, glory, praise to the Most High God, King of the universe, for life, food, clothing, and shelter, praying that the Most High God will continue to be with all of us, Yisrael, scattered in the four corners of the earth. Those of you who are listening today, praying that the Most High God will continue to bless your lives, that He will bestow His kindness and His mercy upon you, that He will bestow His understanding upon you even on this day. Praying that those who will listen in the future, that the Most High will do the same also. And I also pray for those who are sick, the poor, the needy, the fatherless, the widow, those who are in need of the blessings and the grace of the Creator. If you're going through any ailment, praying that the Most High God would heal you. If you're going through any type of situation, I'm praying that the Creator will continue to be with you. Those who are going through mental trauma, those who are going through any type of sickness, pray that the Most High God would be with you. Those who are going through any loss, praying that the Most High God be with the family of Chief Elazar Ben Levi, and be with his wife, Princess Naomi, and the loss of her son, Zuriel, being Chief Elazar, and praying that the Most High God be also with the rest of the family, Chief Shammah, Chief Mikael, and all the brothers who are over there mourning at this time. Praying that the Most High God will strengthen them, keep them, even in this their time of loss. Also praying that the Creator will continue to be with Yisrael, scattered in the four corners of the earth. And I pray that the Most High God will strengthen us all and keep us. Hallelujah. Shalom, family. I hope that everyone is well. I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth will continue to be with all of us. And as we embark on this day and the lesson of the day, today we will be going over Pesach and CHOKMAH. So Pesach is Passover, for those of you that might not know the Hebrew expression or the way to say it in Hebrew. And CHOKMAH is Chag being feast, and matzot is unleavened bread. So the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is upon us, which will be coming up sometime in the middle of April. I think it's around April 12th. April 12th until April 13th. So it will be right after when we will be observing this, right after the Shabbat day into that first day of the week, which is that Sunday. So definitely we looking forward to this, but before we move forward, we need to let all of you know, those of you who are new, those of you that might not have ever heard about this or don't know how to observe this time in this season, we're going to go over some prerequisites that are needed to observe this time in a right manner. So for that, I'm going to hand it over to my brother, Rabbi Chief Binyamin, who will be making a presentation on the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Rabbi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Hopefully you're doing well. Giving praise and honor to the Most High, Jehovah God. Thanking Him for the opportunity that He's giving us to study His Word this day. And again, praying that He continues to bless all of us in this day as we do this Bible study every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time, and which is in line with the time where I am currently right now. So we invite you all to share this with your family, with your friends, this weekly Bible study. As long as you utilize the Bible as the foundation of your belief, this Bible study is for you. We pray that the Most High, the creator of the heavens and the earth, will bless us all with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, as we should receive it from him, and as we are speaking it to all of those who are listening. So as we just mentioned, whether you're watching live or if you're going to be watching this later on, we pray that the Most High will bless us all with the proper knowledge, wisdom, and understanding on how to observe the season that is upon us. So it is about a month away from now, as it was just mentioned, but we usually do this type of lesson usually a month before it comes in. So for the year 2025, the Feast of Unleavened Bread will begin on the evening of April 12th. So in reality, the Passover, or the time for Passover, as we'll get into it just now, will actually be on the 12th during the Sabbath day itself, before sundown. And then when the sun goes down, that's when the Feast of Unleavened Bread will begin. So Passover, which is Pesach in the Hebrew language, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is CHOKMAH in the Hebrew language, are actually two separate events. And we'll be detailing that as we will be discussing it at this point. So we will begin our discussion as we will present the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Again, Pesach with CHOKMAH, and as we'll be detailing, they are two separate events. So as mentioned, we do ask that you would share this with your family and your friends. Invite those who may not be familiar with this event that is coming up, so we can all prepare and enjoy this together in a month's time, or a little bit less than a month's time from now, as it will be coming up. So Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, it has a rich history, as we'll be detailing. You find the history of it in the book of Exodus. So Exodus, of course, by the name of it, is talking about the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, and how God, the God of Israel, brought the children of Israel out of Egypt via Moses and Aaron, and the signs and the wonders that he put within their hands to display as they were approaching the Pharaoh at that time, and speaking to the Egyptians in regards to the children of Israel coming out of the land of Egypt. So the Feast of Unleavened Bread itself is actually a festival. It's commonly translated as feast, but as we've been talking about in the past, it is a festival, and that's probably a better translation for the word Chag, is to say it's a festival, because that gives it more of the idea of the festivities and the events that should be taking place during that time. So it's an ancient festival, which has cultural and historical importance. And as I just mentioned, the history of Passover is recounted in the book of Exodus of the Holy Scriptures, or the second book of the Bible. So Passover itself, as we mentioned, is Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread are two separate events. So Passover itself, it dates back to the time of Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. There were 10 plagues altogether, and the Passover was the final of the 10 plagues that the God of Israel inflicted upon the Egyptians. And it was basically as God passed over Egypt, he slew all the firstborn of the Egyptians. And this led Pharaoh to release the Israelites from the bondage that he was inflicting upon them. So Passover, Pesach, as it is said in Hebrew, it commemorates Jehovah God's passing over Egypt and sparing the Israelites during that Exodus. Again, it is the final of the 10 plagues that you will read about in the book of Exodus. And the name Passover comes from this final plague, where Jehovah God passed over the houses of the Israelites that were marked with lamb's blood. So the children of Israel that were in Egypt during that time were commanded to set aside a lamb or a goat on the 10th day of the first month. We'll get into that shortly. But they were supposed to set aside a lamb or a goat on the 10th day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar. Then on the 14th day at dusk, they would have slay that animal and take its blood, put it upon the doorposts and the lintel of the homes that they were dwelling in. So as Jehovah God passed over Egypt that night, making a difference between the children of Israel and the Egyptians, the children of Israel were spared, as God was slaying the firstborn of the Egyptians, both man and beast. So the Feast of Unleavened Bread, as mentioned, is a separate event which begins on the 15th day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar, and it lasts for 7 days. And it comes in immediately after the Passover. So the Passover, as mentioned, and we'll get into it a little bit more as well, it's on the 14th day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar. Then on the 15th day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar begins the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which lasts for 7 days. And it commemorates the Israelites' exodus from Egypt, and it details how the children of Israel, because they left out of Egypt in haste, they did not allow or didn't have enough time for their dough to rise in order to make leavened bread. So they were eating unleavened bread as they were departing out of Egypt. So the children of Israel are commanded to eat unleavened bread for 7 days to remember how the children of Israel left out of Egypt in haste. And you read about the details of that in Exodus chapters 11 through 13. So the two of them together, and as you know, we are summarizing, they are both appointed seasons of the children of Israel, which are observed annually. And these events, basically, you have to follow the Hebrew calendar in order to get the observance of it. So the Hebrew calendar is a lunar solar calendar. Each month begins with a new moon, and it has the solar aspect of it because you have to combine the lunar aspect of the calendar with the solar calendar in order to get a complete year. So it does detail the revolution of the moon around the earth, along with the earth around the sun in conjunction. That's how the Hebrew calendar works. And as mentioned, and you read this in the book of Exodus, and mainly in in chapter 12, that it begins on the 15th day of the month of Abib. And you read that the first month of the month on the Hebrew calendar is Abib throughout the Holy Scriptures, as we'll be detailing shortly. So Abib marks the beginning of month for the children of Israel, as you read in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2. So Abib is the beginning of months. So these are the verses that you will see that this first month in the Hebrew calendar is called Abib. Exodus chapter 13, verse 4, Exodus chapter 23, verse 15, and Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1. These verses mention the word Abib as the beginning of months for the children of Israel, or the month that the children of Israel came out of Egypt. So again, by reading these verses, you will see the name of the first month on the Hebrew calendar. And so now the significance of and the memorial of the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread is that they both connect Jehovah God with the children of Israel, and they serve as memorials of the birth of the nation and the events of the Exodus that we've been speaking about. So as we get closer to Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, we may do another summary just specifically about the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread and those direct events. But the purpose of our discussion today is our preparation for this festival that is approaching, because it does require some preparation, especially based on how we live today and the modern conveniences that exist today that we have to avoid during this time in order to observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So there are laws, the statutes, the commandments, overall known as the Torah, or the instructions that are detailed in the first 5 books of the Holy Scriptures, or the first 5 books of the Bible. So during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, there are certain laws that have to be observed, and primarily these are no eating of anything leavened. So this deals with bread, with cake, or any type of baked goods. They cannot have any leavening in them, or they cannot be made with leaven, or anything that causes the dough mixture to rise, as we'll be detailing as we go on. And along with that, it's not just about not eating anything leavened, but we have to remove leavening from our houses during those 7 days, or the leavening has to be removed from our homes for those 7 days. So from the 15th day of the first month on the Hebrew calendar up until the 21st day of the first month, leavening has to be removed. So that would technically, so as we mentioned, for this year, 2025, that will be beginning on the 12th day at evening. And so basically, for this year, in order to prepare for Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you'd be removing leavening actually, before the Sabbath that comes in this year. But overall, it would be, the Feast of Unleavened Bread itself would be technically the 13th day of April up until basically the 19th day of April, those 7 days. But it actually begins on the 12th day of April, beginning that evening, and it will it will end on the 19th day of April, which is, of course, the Sabbath day itself. So just given the contemporary dates for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or CHOKMAH, for this year 2025. So there's no eating of leavened bread for those 7 days, and leavening has to be removed from our homes for those 7 days. And that's in Exodus chapter 12, verse 15, and also 19 through 20. And these are some of the verses that detail, and we'll read this one specifically in Exodus chapter 12, verse 15, that 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread, howbeit the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. So this, among other verses that are in the Holy Scriptures, detail how important it is to not eat leavening leavened bread during these 7 days, and how we have to remove leavening from our homes and our borders for those 7 days. And also, as we will read also in Exodus chapter 12, verse 19 and 20, it detailed the same thing about not eating anything leavened and removing the leavening from our homes during those 7 days. And now leavening and leavened bread, because this is something that we have to discuss specifically, living in the time frame that we are living in. So leavening refers, basically explicitly to bread. So even when you look in the dictionary, you see the word leaven or leavening is referring to anything that is compounded by dough. So this would be bread, this would be cake. And again, any type of baked goods, this is where the term leavening refers to. In Hebrew, you have these two words, sa'or and chametz. Sa'or, just by the literal definition, would relate to sourdough or balm. These are the methods that were used in ancient times in Egypt and the surrounding area known as the Levant, going up to, all throughout that Middle Eastern region, Sumeria, going up into that direction, that when it came to making leavened bread, it was made out of sourdough. So when you think of the process of sourdough bread today, that is the exact method of how people leavened or made leavened bread in ancient times. Then the other word, chametz, Hebrew word, is the word for leavened bread. So these are the two words that we will be referring to as we're having our discussion. So leavening is sa'or in Hebrew, again meaning sourdough or balm, can refer to any agent used to make bread rise. And this word appears 5 times in the Holy Scriptures: Exodus 12:15, 12:19, 13:7, Leviticus 2:11, and Deuteronomy 16:4. So these are the only 5 times that this word sa'or appear in the Holy Scriptures, and when you read it, it's directly connected with bread. Some people, some Hebrew dictionaries, you'll see the word fermentation in the English translation. That's just using a modern term of the fermentation of the actual dough, but it's not speaking about fermentation in the generic term or the general term. Leavening is basically the fermentation of dough, but the sa'or that we read about in the Holy Scriptures is not speaking about fermentation in the general sense. So ancient methods used to make bread were basically sourdough and balm. And the definition of fermentation is a process in which an agent causes an organic substance to break down into simpler substances, especially the anaerobic breakdown of sugar into alcohol. And so this is not chametz that is referred to in the Holy Scriptures. Chametz, as we've been speaking about, is leavened bread, as we'll be talking about at this point. So chametz, which is leavened bread, means to be leavened, crude, or red in the terms, or when it's, as we're speaking about our subject, it's leavened bread when it's used as a noun, and it appears as a noun 11 times in the Holy Scriptures, which are detailed on the screen right now: Exodus 12:15, 13:3, and 13:7. Exodus 23:18, 34:25, also in the book of Leviticus 2:11, 6:17, 7:13, 23:17, in the book of Deuteronomy 16:3, and the book of Amos 4:5. Now, as a verb, it appears 8 times: Exodus 12:19, 20, 34, and 39, and in Hosea 7:4. And in those instances, it's all in connection with bread. Now, there were 3 other times that the word chametz appears in the Holy Scriptures: in the book of Psalm 71:4, 73:21, and Isaiah 63:1, which the verbs using the other terminology to be cruel or to be red. But primarily, when you see chametz as a noun, it's speaking specifically about leavened bread, which has to be removed from our homes during this Feast of Unleavened Bread and cannot be eaten during that time. Also, leavened bread chametz is defined as any of the 5 grains, wheat, spelt, barley, oats, and rye, which has contact with water, just to give it a direct. And this is a serious Torah prohibition, and for that reason, we take extra protective measures on the Feast of Unleavened Bread to prevent any mistakes. So in ancient time, all that had to be done was to remove the sourdough or the dough that was rising from our homes and make sure we don't bake that to make sourdough in ancient times to comply with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But today, there has to be extra measures taken because there are other, what they would call today, leavening agents, which are used to make leavened bread. So chametz. So now we're going to talk about this term called kwitniot. So we spoke specifically about chametz, which is leavened bread. We spoke about soor, which are the sour, which is chametz with the leavened bread, and soor, which is the sourdough. We spoke specifically about that. Now, in today's time, if you're following Jewish tradition, you might be removing beans, any type of legumes, rice, millet from your diet during the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the reason for that is due to Ashkenazi Jewish tradition, which prohibited those types of grains from the diet during those 7 days. So on its own, we're dealing with kwitniot. This rule requires extensive effort to observe, but it is at least quite clear. So for the past 700 years, however, Ashkenazi Jews have complicated Passover observance by avoiding rice, millet, and legumes. These are collectively known as kwitniot from the Hebrew word katan, or kotan, which is little. Now, in recent years, the discovery of the New World food quinoa, or quinoa, some people might pronounce it, which most Jews now consider kosher for Passover, has eased the kwitniot burden somewhat. And also to note that the conservative movements, Committee on Jewish Law and Standards, ruled in December 2015 that kwitniot now are permitted on Passover. So where during the past 700 years, Ashkenazi Jews were not eating these specific grains for the Feast of Unleavened Bread from the year 2015. So for the past 10 years, the conservative branch of the Ashkenazi Jewish movement has allowed kwitniot. But again, the Orthodox would still not deal with kwitniot, as well as other branches of Ashkenazi. The Sephardic Jewish branch does not follow the kwitniot standard at all. So we just bringing up kwitniot just as part of the discussion, because again, depending on where you live, you may have a question as to why amongst the Jewish faction, they don't eat beans, rice, probably chickpeas, and any type of grain, such as the picture that you would see on the screen at this time, or the video that you would see on the screen at this time. So now kwitniot sometimes referred to generically as legumes. This includes, as we mentioned, rice, corn, soybeans, string beans, peas, lentils, mustard, sesame seeds, and poppy seeds, even though kwitniot cannot technically become chametz, because this, you could make flour of these grains, but you wouldn't be able to make leavened bread out of this without adding something else to the dough to cause the rise. So these grains specifically are not chametz. It was basically what we mentioned earlier, that chametz is made from wheat, spelt, rye, and the other two that were mentioned earlier. The Samach, the Rabbi Yitzchak of Korbel, explains that products of kwitniot appear like chametz products. For example, it can be hard to distinguish between rice flour, kwitniot, and wheat flour chametz. Therefore, to prevent confusion, all kwitniot was prohibited. So this is the reason why amongst the Ashkenazi Jews that they prohibited kwitniot, because when you grind it and make it in flour, people can be confused. So as a protection for the Torah of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, they banned anything that could be made into flour for those 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So medieval Jewish sages placed a ban on eating legumes, wheat on the Passover because they are similar in texture to commates. As we just mentioned, even bread can be made from their flour. So people might assume that if, for example, cornbread can be eaten on Passover, wheat or rye bread can be eaten too. This prohibition includes rice, beans, and corn. This injunction was unanimously accepted by Ashkenazi Jews. And again, this is just Ashkenazi Jews only, not the Sephardic or Mizrahi or any of the other branches of Judaism. This was only the Ashkenazi Jews that put the ban on these type of grains. So this prohibition is only with regards to consumption of wheat meal. There is no obligation, however, to destroy or sell wheat meal products before Passover. So amongst the Ashkenazi Jews, they prohibit people from eating these grains, but you don't have to remove it from your homes according to their tradition. Again, we're just speaking about various traditions of Judaism in regards to how people may observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So now we're going to talk about maror, or the bitter herbs. So maror or mararim, bitter herbs, is an element of the Passover service. So through the Passover Seder or Passover service universally or worldwide, you're going to have, in some factions, you're going to have lamb, you're going to have the unleavened bread, and you're going to have the bitter herbs. So now, according to tradition, it symbolizes the bitterness of slavery in Egypt. Again, this is not something that is said specifically in the Holy Scriptures, but tradition holds that this is eaten because to symbolize the bitterness in Egypt. Now, there are different Jewish communities that have adopted various herbs based on availability and tradition. So we're going to be talking about the various Judaic customs in regards to maror or mararim, or the bitter herbs. So according to the biblical, so we're just giving you some biblical or Talmudic information about maror. So Exodus chapter 12, verse 8 is where it says, and they shall eat the flesh in that night, talking about the Passover sacrifice. Roast with fire and unleavened bread with bitter herbs, they shall eat it. So these would be the three things that would be eaten on the night of, or basically for Passover. And we'll speak about, the fact that we don't actually keep Passover technically today. We just acknowledge the time, but we don't have a Passover sacrifice because the Passover is actually a sacrifice. So now dealing with the Mishnah, just giving the information, Pesachim 2:6 lists 5 types of maror: katseret, which is romaine lettuce; ushlin, which is wild lettuce or dandelion greens; tamcha, which is possibly a local bitter herb; BINAH, which is chicory or endives; and general maror, which is bitter greens. So now also on a Passover Seder, you might see a mixture of these. Again, this is following Judaic traditions where this Talmud source is coming from. But just going back to the biblical source, there's supposed to be bitter herbs, using the English translation for mararim, that are eaten during the Passover service. So speaking about maror itself and just the geography of the time. So ancient Israel and Egypt had wild lettuces, chicory, and dandelion greens. This is what existed. Again, we're talking about as the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, and God made this command that they would be eating the Passover sacrifice along with the unleavened bread and bitter herbs that night before they left. Now, horseradish, which is something that is used amongst Ashkenazi Judaic system, did not grow in Israel or Egypt. It thrives in colder climates, making it historically inaccurate to say that horseradish is actually bitter herbs. And the Talmud, again, just referring to a Talmudic source, which is something just more ancient than, of course, the modern time that we're living in, states that the ideal maror should start mild and become bitter, matching romaine lettuce. So medieval adaptations and modern variations. So Ashkenazi Jews, they use horseradish because the lettuce and chicory and things like that were not susceptible to the cold climates that they were living in Eastern and Central Europe. So they made a substitute for the actual maror or the actual bitter herbs by using horseradish, and that tradition spread amongst the Ashkenazi communities all the way to the United States. Now, amongst the Sephardic Jews, dealing with those in Spain, North Africa, and Middle East, they continue to use romaine lettuce, chicory, and wild greens. Also, endives can be added to this list as well. Now, the Yemenite Jews, they use fenugreek, coriander, and celery leaves. And The others, they use green onions, leeks, bitter gourd, and mustard green. So just giving you various traditions among some of the Judaic systems and traditions that for bitter herbs. So now Maror, getting back to what it should be, and what it should not be first, that the most historically accurate maror is romaine lettuce, chicory, or wild bitter greens. And again, endives could be added to that list, as chicory and endives are actually in the same family. So, you'll see, today, some congregations, including this congregation, utilize endives and lettuce for the bitter herbs, but still maintaining the horseradish, because that is, that's only the tradition of the Ashkenazi Jews. And again, horseradish is a medieval Ashkenazi adaptation due to climate constraints. Different traditions have preserved maror in diverse ways, reflecting regional adaptations while maintaining the core symbolism of Passover. Again, that tradition of that bitterness of coming out of Egypt. So now, dealing with the Feast of Unleavened Bread again, and actually dealing with leavening. So dealing with this congregation, BINAH CHOKMAH teaches his members to remove certain ingredients during the season. We're dealing with baker's yeast, brewer's yeast, baking powder, baking soda, balm, etc. And these ingredients can leaven bread and therefore are prohibited. And if you go to the website of D.C.B.org, you'll be able to scroll down to the bottom as you see the images direct, or the video on the side is directing you to. You'll be able to scroll down to the bottom, and where you have the download section, you'll be able to click on the ingredient list, and also a condensed version of this entire presentation talking about Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So you'll be able to download that and get the list that we'll be talking about just now. So today's terms and today's time, yeast is added to that list of things to remove, even though it's supposed to be just sourdough and balm, because people use yeast as a leavening agent today. And so these are the list of ingredients to remove. Primarily, you're going to be looking for these ingredients not only in your foods, but also in anything that would be in your homes. So you're going to be removing baking powder and baking soda. So you most likely would find these ingredients in your toothpaste and your mouthwash and things like that. So this ingredient list are the ingredients to remove, because again, remember, you have to remove leavening from your homes for those 7 days. So again, this list of ingredients you can download from the D.C.B website. These are the specific ingredients that you have to remove from your homes to be in compliance with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now, these are just ingredients to avoid. So when you talk about avoiding these ingredients, you don't have to remove them from your homes, but you can avoid them, pack them up in your homes and stay with them. And then this is just as a precaution. So based on Jehovah God's law and the state of modern processes, BINAH CHOKMAH also teaches his members to eat only fresh foods and ground foods during the season. And as a precaution, canned foods, cheese, vinegar containing products, pastas, processed grain, flour products are also left alone, not removed, but also just left alone as a precaution. Again, these are not leavening itself, but so because some of these other items are controversial, and especially with the vinegar. Vinegar is actually something that is not prohibited even amongst Judaic traditions, or any of the Judaic traditions. Vinegar and wine. These are things that are not prohibited, even though some people may remove them for various reasons. And so compliance, as we come to the conclusion, compliance with these regulations for Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread ensure adherence to the joyous occasion of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or the Festival of Unleavened Bread, as we've been saying it recently in Bible study. It is a season of celebration and not difficult to comply with, and Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread are central to Israelite identity and heritage. And as we celebrate these ancient traditions, let us also reflect on their universal messages of hope and redemption. So we went through talking about Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, now a month ahead of time, as we start to prepare for that season. So we will spend some time for questions in regards to Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. I'm praying that the Most High God has allowed us to be complete in our description of it. But of course, as we are all growing and learning together, there are going to be some questions and comments in regard to that. We will have a more detailed question and answer session specifically about Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread in the weeks to come. But again, we do this presentation about a month in advance just to get people ready. And normally, of course, for our Bible study, we do about 20 minutes to half an hour. We went a little bit over today on our discussion so that we can leave the remaining time of the hour for questions and comments for those that may have any. So for that, I'm going to return it to Chief Uziel, who will moderate this portion of our Bible study.
Hallelujah. Torah Rabbi, for the wisdom and the understanding that the Most High God is giving you. And at this time, we will discuss the questions that you may have. One of the first things with water, someone asked about is Poland Spring good during the Passover season. I said, for most part, I believe Poland Spring is one of the waters that are good. But you do have to be careful with water because some waters do add sodium bicarbonate to their as part of their ingredients. Yes, I think spring water or purified water, one of those brands, maybe a couple of them, they add sodium bicarbonate to their water.
Yeah, Pure Life specifically.
Pure Life.
But yeah, you have to be careful of the purified waters for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Not all of them, but yeah, you do have to read the ingredients. So it's best to focus on spring water, where the ingredient is just water. But yeah, some of those other companies, such as Pure Life, they put baking soda or sodium bicarbonate in their water, which is one of the ingredients that we cannot use for the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
So yes, with that, just be careful. So things they don't discuss in church. I know you're trying to teach Hebrew, but for the sake of English speakers and YouTube algorithm, while scrolling, can you translate the titles of all future videos to English also? So like I said, I already started with this one. I put it in English, Passover, and Feast of Unleavened Bread.
And as we can continue to do that, and also in the slides, try to do a better job of having the English and the Hebrew in conjunction.
All right. Let's see here. Shalom, Rabbi. Am I in violation if I do not eat the unleavened bread?
So that's actually a very good question, because the reality is that, of course, we're not supposed to eat leavened bread for 7 days. However, it does mention that we're supposed to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. So it's definitely a good question, but it's specifically said we're supposed to eat unleavened bread for those 7 days. So for the best of our ability, we have to make sure we do so.
Sister Abi, question concerning the making of homemade matzah and the dough time. Is there a time limit on the dough because our foreparents had the dough already and had to leave in a hurry? Please explain.
So there's technically no time frame. I'm just using the word technically. Now we can get into more of a discussion of how sourdough bread is made, and that actually is a day plus process. So as long as you make your dough the same day and you bake it the same day or fry it, however you're going to do it the same day, then you would not be in violation. But if you definitely leave it out, and basically, probably in the future, just for the interest of time, we didn't add the sourdough making process to the presentation, also the wine making process to the presentation. That was just in the interest of time and just covering the exact details. But when looking to the process of sourdough, it takes some time. You have to make some dough rise for at least a day, and then you take in a portion of that raised dough to add it to a fresh batch of dough. And basically, the technical aspect is that the yeast cultures that grow on that raised dough is going to be added to the fresh dough, and the yeast cultures that are in there causes that new batch of dough to rise. And that's one of the reasons why also yeast is the item to remove from your homes for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The packaged yeast, you can't get rid of yeast, in
the atmosphere
form,
right.
In nature. But the packaged yeast or the commercial yeast, you can definitely get rid of because that's packaged for the purpose of being used as leaven.
So what I would say about that is that we do not follow the 18-minute rule, I believe. 18-minute, 20-minute rule of that you have to knead your dough and have everything prepared. 18, 20-minute rule that you have to knead your dough and have everything prepared, your matzahs, everything prepared, cooked. And if you don't have it all done by that time, then the dough is no good. We don't follow that. In order for that dough to become soured, it's a process of days and months. And that actual dough that's put to the side so it could become sour so that you can add it to fresh dough so that new dough will rise. For that process to happen, it takes weeks for that actual dough to sour and become, become effective enough to make new dough rise. All right? So it takes a while for that to happen. So it doesn't take 18 minutes. It doesn't take 20 minutes. It doesn't take an hour. It doesn't take 2 hours. So you're pretty safe with kneading your dough. You might not want to cook it all at one shot. You could wrap it up, put it in the refrigerator. You come back home again. You work it over again. You make you some fresh matzahs again. So it does not, we do not follow a 18, 20-minute preparation system.
And also bear in mind the children of Israel left Egypt with the dough.
Right.
So they were carrying dough that they made into unleavened bread later on their journey.
Right.
So that was well past the 18 minutes as they were journeying out of Egypt with that dough.
Right. Let me see here. Shalom, do you believe the Most High is holding us accountable for not keeping the Passover 100% on time, referring to all the different calendars we have right now?
For that type of question, I can't, and I wouldn't think for God. It's as on a national basis, it's our best interest to observe these seasons together. But in terms of the question itself, I'm not going to think for God and say that He's holding us accountable for doing it in different seasons or different days. Specific. Now, doing it out of season overall, that's going to be a problem. Like if you're doing, because today most congregations or most communities are keeping Passover within the same month. There are a few that's going to just have it. Very few, maybe one or two that are doing it, completely different time of the year and fall and winter and stuff like that. But for the most part, most people are doing it within the same few days or in the same month. Some people may be a month off, by virtue of not doing an extra month, not doing 13 months 1 year to have that leap year to keep everything in season. So again, that's why might have people, a month apart. But again, specifically for the question, I can't think for God, and I wouldn't attempt to do so.
I think there's a part, I can't remember where, I believe I saw it, where the Most High said when He bring us back that He will bring back the understanding of the seasons or the right seasons or something. I think I read that before. I can't remember quite where I read it. But the Most High knew that we will be in this type of predicament. Like the rabbis say, as long as we're not out of season, the Most High understands that we're going to have this type of confusion. When He sends a prophet or someone, a messenger, to tell us that this is the correct way to do it, then we will understand and know that that's the correct way to do it. But in terms of us keeping it on, a day after, a day before, we're going to work that out. You know what I mean? Yah willing, we're going to work that out. And there is, the Most High God would straighten us out. The importance is that we observe the seasons, that we acknowledge that the Most High God created these times for us to observe wherever we're at, and that we move forward and pass it on to the next generation. Let's see here. Hold on. All right. Exodus 32:25. What enemies are the children of Israel being exposed to? Are they not in the wilderness amongst themselves?
And give that verse again. You said there was a verse along with that?
32:25. 32:25.
I'm looking at it up. I'm putting that on the screen. So 32:25 says, when Moses saw that the people were broken loose, for Aaron had let them loose for a derision among their enemies. So the enemies of the children of Israel would be the surrounding nations that are in around the area that they're living, that they were sojourning in during that time. So they were dwelling at Mount Sinai. We read earlier where the Amalekites were attacking the children of Israel. They were entering into Canaanite territory shortly. Portion of the Midianites were enemies of the children of Israel. So any of those nations that the Edomites, the Moabites, so any of those nations that were in the surrounding area that God was going to let the children of Israel pass through their borders were the enemies. So by the children of Israel worshiping the molten calf, they were letting their guard down and basically getting rid of their security, which is the true and living God. So as a result of that, when God is leaving you, you're left open to those that are around you that don't like you and don't want you to be around anyway. So those would be the nations that they were passing through.
Here. How can the children of Israel justify celebrating deliverance from slavery Egypt if Yah has cursed and sent them back into slavery Egypt per Deuteronomy 28:68? Ditto Jeremiah's 70-year prophecy.
So the Feast of Unleavened Bread itself is commanded to be celebrated in every generation and in every dwelling, as we read in Leviticus chapter 23. So it's basically the celebration of the deliverance from the physical Egypt, or the actual Egypt, the nation Egypt. So that can be celebrated at all times, even though the children of Israel are dwelling in captivity now. Again, it's the celebrating of the deliverance during the actual captivity that is being observed.
Question. Exodus 32:33. What book is spoken of?
32:33, and that's not far from where we were at just now. 32:33, and Jehovah said unto Moses, whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. This book, we don't have an exact answer in terms of what that book is. Moses was familiar with this book, or the term of this book, but in reality, this is not something that we can accurately answer today. And now, just to give an answer by speculation and opinion, the book that Moses is talking about or referred to first, that Jehovah God said that he will blot sinners out of that book, by opinion, is just a terminology of God remembering, everybody that exists on earth, and him taking note, the same way that he knows all the stars of the heavens by name. He knows every human being, past, present, and in the future by name and all they're doing. So it could be something that's allegory, but again, that's just an opinion.
Rabbi, don't close the book. Hold on.
Okay.
Exodus 33:19. Why is this written in first and third person? Thanks.
So 33:19. Which
Why is it written in first and third person?
Okay, and he said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee, and will claim the name of Jehovah before thee, and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. So we know that this is God speaking. So when it says and he, so that would be is going back. Doing that caused it to lose place. Oh, it went back to 32. So there it is. So, and he, which is third person. So we know that God is speaking here because this is after Moses asks to see the glory of God. So the response is, and he. So the narrator of the book is saying in the third person that God is saying this. So in the quotation, I, which is the first person, this is what God is saying. This is what God literally said, that I will make all my goodness pass before thee and will proclaim the name of Jehovah. It says here in the English, the Lord. And as we normally state for our Bible study, we mention the name of God in the places they appear in the Hebrew text. Yod, Hey, Wow, Hey. They're just highlighting things briefly on the screen, which we pronounce here as Jehovah. Many people pronounce as Yahweh. Those are the consonants of God's name, which is translated in English, the Lord. So God is saying that he's going to allow, or he's going to cause his name to be proclaimed before Moses. So that's why he says it went back to the third person if the question is referring to the name of the Lord and the Lord being third person. If it's talking about here as a third person, is God, as we read later on, when Moses is in the mountain and God is passing over him, we hear that declaration of in verse 6. And Jehovah passed before him and proclaimed, Jehovah, God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy unto the 1,000 generations, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and upon the children's children unto the third and unto the fourth generation. So God, it went back to the third person in that instance because God is saying that he's going to cause his name to be proclaimed before Moses or over Moses. So it went back to the third person for that reason.
We have here, so many, hold on. Shalom. Is it best to have a different set of cooking utensils, pots, pans, silverware for Passover?
It's not necessary. If you are able to do so. But even if you have a separate set, you still have to clean the previous set you're not using to make sure that there's no leavening caked up on those pots or those pans. So while it may be, if you're able to do so financially to have another set just for those 7 days, do so. But again, it's not required. All you have to do is clean your ovens, clean your pots, your pans, your baking pans, anything like that. Your rolling pins, make sure that those are completely cleaned of any leaven. And your house overall, make sure everything is clean going into those 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
All praises and Torah thanks, the Most High Powerful. Question: how and why the Feast of Unleavened Bread, 7 days? What is the significance? Just curious. Why is the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days?
So it doesn't give a reason why it's actually 7 days. 2 out of the 3 feasts are 7 days. The Feast of Unleavened Bread is 7 days, and the Feast of Booths is 7 days. We know that 7 is just a popular number in the Holy Scriptures. That's just given an opinion. But in terms of the actual reason why 7 days is not specifically given. Now, the reason for keeping the Feast of Unleavened Bread is to remember that the children of Israel ate unleavened bread coming out of Egypt, but again, for the reason of the exact 7 days is not specified.
Could we still cook chicken, beef, and fish?
Yes, for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, yes, you can eat any meat that is acceptable according to Leviticus 11, or any animal that is acceptable according to Leviticus 11. The prohibition is strictly on leavened bread, or bread made with any of those leavened agents that were mentioned in the list earlier.
Things they don't discuss in church. Exodus 23:21, does an angel have the power to forgive or not forgive human sins, or only Yah? Cross-referenced question in Matthew chapter 9, verse 1 through 8. Exodus 23:21, Matthew
23:21.
Yeah. And 9.
So, the simple answer would be that the angel does not have the power to do so. The angel or the messenger can only do what God
tells it.
Specified that it can and cannot do. So basically, the forgiveness would not be by the messenger, only if God allowed or told the messenger it can do so. That is how it would be done. So that's just to give a simple answer. So the power is not within the messenger or the angel itself. It's whatever power or whatever allowance God gave to a certain messenger or angel.
Let me see here. Shalom, Chief Uzi Alewi and Chief Rabbi Binyamin. Can you please give us up to how many days can we keep cooked food during the Feast of Unleavened Bread? 3 days, and should we burn, bury, or leftover?
So in terms of, we're taking away from, we're taking out all of the leavened bread for those 7 days. In regards to anything else, there's no time limit in terms of how long things can stay within your home. So, because of course, there's preservation, you put stuff in your refrigerator, it can last a few days. So just for your own health, you wouldn't want to eat anything spoiled, but there's no time limit in terms of any of the animals or leftovers, anything like that for those 7 days. So as long as it's edible and it's not going to be damaging to your health, you can eat it within those 7 days. It's just the leavened bread you have to get rid of.
The only thing that was prohibited to eat, and don't let it eat any don't eat any in the morning, is the
sacrifices.
The sacrifice, right? That Passover lamb. If you didn't complete it, that's why when you read the actual precept of the Passover, when we coming out of Egypt, and the Most High said, if there's one person, 2 people in a family, a husband and wife, but then the next family have 2 people with a child, they said pair up, come together, right? Because you don't want that lamb to be wasted, right? Because at the end, in the morning, you're gonna have to burn the remaining parts of it, and the bones and stuff have to be burned. So you want to, you want to be as efficient as you can without wasting, and God also considering the amount of animals that is going to take to slaughter and that are going to go to waste. That's the part that we don't talk about, that God even has mercy on the lamb, right, in telling us to pair. So we don't have to kill unnecessary lambs during that season, and that everybody will be satisfied and really nothing go to waste. The only thing you'll be throwing in that fire will be those bones, right? I don't know if you want to touch on that, Rabbi.
And just to expand a little bit, when you're living in regions where people do have goats, lamb, cows, even today, whether it's probably in the southern part of the United States or in the Caribbean, if you don't have people have, especially in the Caribbean, people have an excess of lambs and goats. but they don't eat them every day. Like in the United States, if you live in a city, you just go to the store, you buy lamb, you buy goat, whatever you buy, beef, and you just eat whatever amount that you buy. In places where people have the animals, and it's also shown in the scriptures when the children of Israel were in the desert and they said that they had nothing to eat, but yet they had an abundance of cattle. The mindset of people are that if you don't have enough people to eat the entire animal, you're not going to kill it. So that's just to add to what Chief Yusuf was saying in terms of animals don't go to waste. That when people have enough people to eat an animal, that's when they slaughter it.
Things they don't discuss in church. It's cannabis, Hebrew, quane, balsam, translated calamus or aromatic cane. Part of the holy anointing oil that the priests inhale as incense.
There's an opinion that that's what it is.
In the tabernacle and later temple, Exodus 30, verse 23.
Yeah, there's an opinion, and you'll see this mainly on social media, that they say cannabis is the quane. That is one of the items that will go into the incense that will be burnt. And also, or actually in the oil, as it was mentioned in the question. So that's just something that's an opinion. Again, you see that spread on social media, but there's no actual evidence to that.
Nishlakia Yisrael Naftali, thank you so very much. You very well forgiven. Things they don't discuss in church. Wasn't Moses referring to the book of life as referenced by David in Psalm 69:28, Daniel 12:1, and Revelation 3:5, 13:8, 20:12, and 21:27?
Only because it didn't say that. I didn't want to give the speculation to say what that book is. So it could be allegory, it could be a metaphor, it could be an actual book. We don't know that Moses was speaking about. Of course, Moses knew a lot more than the rest of us knew, but there's no evidence to support specifically what that book was referring to.
What about distilled water?
Yeah, distilled water would be fine for those 7 days. Basically, the process with distilled water is boiling the water. Well, the simplified explanation of distilled water is boiled water. Of course, it's an actual process, but the simplified explanation is actually the water is boiled, and that's how it's purified for that version.
Hold on for 1 second. Is the camp anywhere in or near Tennessee? No.
Is there a camp near Tennessee?
Is the camp? Is
Oh.
the a camp? Oh, I guess that is there a camp? I guess they would.
There a camp near Tennessee?
Yeah.
There were Israelites in Tennessee in a specific camp. I can't think of right now. There is one in Jackson, Mississippi. I'd have to look at the map to see how close it is to Tennessee. But that's the closest I could think about in that region. But there are Israelites in Tennessee, but a camp specifically, I'd have to look it up and see if there's actually one.
Let's see here. Got it, but I don't want to miss nothing. So yeah, I want to be completely done. Question. Is it a sin to burn frankincense at home with no strings attached?
No. The prohibition would be making a concoction of incense that's written in the Holy Scriptures to burn, or burning incense, or a occult, or a foreign god. But just burning incense for the smell, there's nothing wrong with that. Burning sage just to get rid of evil spirits, yes, there's something wrong with that. But again, just incense for the smell and purifying your room or house, there's nothing wrong with it.
That's right. The other stuff gets into necromancy. So it seems like that's all we have for questions. We are exactly over an hour. Like the rabbi said, we will be going over more of this even during our regular services and all of that. We will be going over more of this. So we'd like to thank you all for coming on. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Also, we are a nonprofit organization, so the way that we produce income, I guess you could say, is by your donations. So programs like this, people usually put them on Patreon. People charge for certain types of Bible studies, but we just ask you for a donation. When we get to this point, we just reach out and hope that you find it in your heart to donate to us. As I say right here, we got Venmo and we got PayPal. We also have Zelle. All of those are under PayPal and Zelle. You could send it to our email address, info@beitdcb.org. That's info@beitdcb.org. And Venmo, you could send it to @beitdcb. @beitdcb. That's the Venmo. All right. Zelle is also info@beitdcb.org. info@beitdcb.org. So we thank you all for your support. And I believe there's another question here before we close out. Question for the elders. What's your opinion on the historical Yeshua HaMashiach? Does he matter, and what was his purpose for Israel?
Okay, so now in terms of our congregation, through the channel that you're watching, and we thank you for watching and participating and subscribing to the channel as well. So in regards to this particular congregation, when we refer to Yeshua or the Christ of the New Testament, he has no bearing in terms of how we worship the true and living God. When we read in the book of Genesis, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We read where his name is Yehovah. We read in various locations, especially if you like reading in the book of Isaiah, chapters 40 through 53, which we've been doing previously. And some of the previous videos on the Bible study you can go to and read about it, where Yehovah God said that he is God alone. He is the only Redeemer. He is the Holy One of Israel. He is the only Savior. He does not give his praise to any graven images. He does not know any other gods beside him. These are the things that Yehovah God or Yahweh God stated in the Old Testament or in the Holy Scriptures. So now when it comes to the New Testament, we do read about Yeshua. We read about, also known as Christ, in the New Testament. And his existence there contradicts the things that we read about in the Old Testament. So in regards to this congregation, we do not subscribe to the idea that there is a specific Messiah or Mashiach that God has sent, or that God came on earth in a human form to do anything. We read in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 18, where God specifies that everyone, just to paraphrase, Jehovah God says that everyone dies for their own sin. So we do not subscribe to the idea of an intercessor between us and God. We as human beings have the opportunity and the ability to pray to God directly without the need of anybody interfering, for lack of a better term. So We do welcome the question, and welcome all of those that may have a different ideology than we do. But that's why we also mentioned with the Bible study that this is a collective learning, a collective growing together. And as long as you utilize the Bible as the foundation of your belief, we can all participate in this together. And the idea is that overall, we are trying to obtain favor in the sight of the true and the living God. Again, as we pronounce his name as Jehovah, and many people pronounce his name as Yahweh. And in order for us to do that, we have to turn to him directly without attaching his name to anyone else. We read in the Holy Scriptures where the children of Israel were calling upon the name of Jehovah or Yahweh and worshiping Asherah, Ashtaroth, Baal, and various other deities along with Jehovah God, and that caused the children of Israel to get in trouble, go into captivity. So, our focus should be to get back to the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments of the creator of the heavens and the earth, and focusing our attention upon him in our prayers, because we have no evidence where Jehovah God himself has sent anyone on our behalf that we can pray to in order to get to him. So hopefully that does answer that question. And again, appreciating the question that was asked.
Hallelujah. You also you could factor in also that why we don't subscribe to it is nowhere in the Holy Scriptures or in the laws of God or in the Tanakh is his name ever mentioned as being a Messiah, as being even a someone that the Most High God sent as a savior to deliver the children of Israel from situations like Samson or any one of that ilk. And when we speak about the word Hamashiach, the only one in the Holy Scriptures that's ever called Hamashiach is Aaron the high priest. No other anointed one was ever called Hamashiach. When you in Hebrew, when you say Ha, that is a definite article. It's like if you're the president of the chess club, if you're the president of the motorcycle club, but if somebody said the president called me yesterday, then you understand clearly who the president is, right? So those are things that we understand and we know. The high priest, the anointed, high priest, Hamashiach, right? He is the only one. Aaron is the only one that's called that in the Old Testament. Now, when we get to prophecy or we get to kings or whatever, none of them are called Hamashiach. Even when we get to the prophecy of a coming anointed one that will sit on the throne of David, he is not called Hamashiach. So these are things that we need to understand and know. The obscurity of him being in the book that God spoken also gives us a great deal of apprehension as to why we don't accept the philosophy as part of our own, because he's never mentioned. God never mentioned them by name. When in other instances God mentioned Cyrus in Isaiah chapter 45, before Cyrus came to be, he called Cyrus his anointed, but yet we have no mention of this Yeshua HaMashiach. So these are the things that give us apprehensions in terms of accepting any historical or even a mythical figure by the name of Yeshua, Jesus, and the other names that they might have, for him. Some people try to connect Isaiah chapter 7 with Matthew chapter 1, but there's really no connection there, because when we speak about Emmanuel was a sign that was supposed to be seen 700 years before the coming of Yeshua or Jesus. So, and most scholars understand and know that. So these are, the arguments and the back and forths, and the reason why us as a people, we do not accept this actual philosophy. First, you have to start with. First, you have to find them in the book, in the Holy Scriptures. You're not going to find his name in the Holy Scriptures. So then after that, what begins to happen naturally is you begin to look for passages to connect one with the other. A lot of the passages are obscured. They're also misquoted from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Things are for example, it says in Isaiah chapter 7, it said the young woman shall bear a child, right? And you should call his name Emmanuel. In the New Testament it says, and the virgin shall bear a child, right? So two very specific things. Of course, a young woman could be a virgin, but a virgin could be any age, could be a young woman, older woman, whatever it might be. But the specificity of a virgin is that a virgin never been touched by a man. So you can have a 70-year-old virgin. You can have a 50-year-old virgin. That's very specific. Two different words, Alma and Betula, right? The Alma and the Betula are two different women. One is a virgin, and one is a young woman. So we understand and we know that there's many things that they got wrong. So when we getting back to Isaiah chapter 7, we're talking about the children of the prophet Isaiah that were used as signs for that period of time. Now they try to connect that with Matthew chapter 1 and say that was the coming of Christ. But when you read, it tells you, and you should call his name Jesus, right? So it's like you're trying to add what was already there to make it fit the narrative that now you want to build up, right? Also, another thing is this: the actual Messiah or the anointed. Don't let the word Messiah confuse you. The Messiah just means anointed. The actual Messiah that the people of Israel was prophesied to come, and the people of Israel were probably waiting for. He was supposed to, or were waiting for. He was supposed to bring peace on the earth. Any prophecy of future life for Israel, meaning even past our time now, that person is supposed to bring some sort of peace, including Elijah the prophet, when he come back and turn the hearts of the parents back to the children and try to get everybody to get along. These are all prophecies of the future that have not happened yet. The prophecy of the child playing by the snake hole and not be bitten, with the wolf laying with the lamb, right? And the lamb not be eaten. Those are all prophecies of the future that the children of Israel understood and knew. When Jesus came, those things were not fulfilled, because during Jesus' time and even after, if you leave a lamb by a wolf, the lamb will be eaten. If a child placed by a snake hole, depending on the size of the snake, the child will either get bitten and poisoned, or the child will get swallowed whole. These are prophecies that went along with that anointed one that was supposed to come, that has not yet come. So now, if that was supposed to be Jesus and those things were not fulfilled, then that would mean that Jesus was not that prophet that the children, or that anointed person that the children of Israel would know to bring peace and a time in the future. because those things were not fulfilled. So therefore in Christianity, they created the second coming theory. And that's something, that we could discuss another day. But I hope I didn't confuse you with that long explanation. I don't know if you want to add something to that. I got to go turn off these alarms, Rabbi.
No, that was it. Just wanted to answer the question in detail. So hopefully the answers are accepted, and it does open up conversation for the future. And also on a side note, from the person that asked the question, Yah's Botanicals, I'm assuming that it's a business. So if they don't mind, we'll probably connect with them later on, if permitted, so that we can patronize their business as well. So we definitely appreciate their support of the channel, and we would like to show support any way possible as well.
Yeah, I just had to go turn off. These are the only kids that I know sleep through alarms. Let me see here. Let me see here, people. Yes, so that's it. I gave you the Venmo information. I gave you the Zelle information and the PayPal. So I think at this time we could close out now, and hoping and praying that the Most High God look down upon each and every one of us, that the Creator. Oh, also like to thank Frejon Binyamin for your third super chat during this show. May the Most High God bless you. Thank you all for your continued support, and thank you specifically for your support. I didn't want to just skip over that. So don't forget, you can also donate this way, actually, with the super chat by hitting the money symbol that's right next to where you type in your chat. You definitely could donate that way. So thank you all once again. I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth will continue to bless and keep us, and continue to watch over us as a people, continue to strengthen us through all of our endeavors. Like I said before, condolences go out to Gavret Naomi for the loss of her son Zuriel. She's had a couple of tough years. She lost her husband a couple of years back, then brother-in-law earlier this year, and now one of her sons. So we pray for Ima Naomi, and I pray that the Most High God be with you, Ima, and strengthen you during this time. Chief Shama and my brother Chief Mikael and everybody from the family, Atara, Migdalia, all the people that I've known for a long time. So I pray that the Most High God be with all of you, and this, the time of your loss, and I pray that the Creator will strengthen you even during this time. No more Cash App, because Cash App is funny, acting funny with us. So yeah, we either using Zelle. Zelle is really easy, it's just our email, and it's through your bank. Most banks have the Zelle app right within them. So try Zelle if you have your bank app. Most likely you will have it. Venmo or PayPal. So thank you all. We appreciate you all for tuning in with us. And as we leave, I will say these words, and I pray that the Most High God would bless us all. Yivareka Yehovah Yishmareka. Ya'ir Yehovah Panawaleka Wikuneka. Yisrael Yahweh Panawale Kawe Asem Lakah Shalom. May Yahweh bless thee and keep thee. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May Yahweh lift up his countenance upon thee and may he grant thee peace. Amen. Thank you all for tuning in. May the creator of heaven and earth be with you all, and everyone have a blessed week. And Yah willing, we'll see y'all next